At its core, Pillars of Eternity is a faithful recreation of classic RPGs like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights. This is both the game's biggest draw and the reason for some of its worst flaws. There are a lot of antiquated parts that seem to focus more on being a callback to those old games rather than moving forward with the functionality that have helped games evolve over the years. And that focus on the past really lessens the experience. But not as much as the bugs and other problems do, but we'll get to that in a minute. On a more positive note, the charm of that style of game it's trying to capture isn't completely lost either. For example, when you create a character, you choose your race, sub-race, class, abilities for that class, attributes, culture, and background. All of those give your character different advantages, anything from unique abilities to stat boosts to circumstantial bonuses. Race and sub-race are the only two that change their physical appearance, but you can define their look further in the last part of character creation. While none of these are groundbreaking, they all make your character feel more personal and fleshed out as a person rather than a bunch of stats slapped onto an avatar. And one nice thing to add before we move on from character creation: armor. Armor between ladies and dudes is nearly identical visually. The same set of armor isn't full plate mail for dudes and bikini mail on the ladies. The armor just forms to the size and shape of your character, whatever they are. The game starts with a perfectly acceptable but not really original story. You're a person, and an unexpected thing happens, and now you're a person with new powers and an invested interest in the madness that changed you. I'm not going to say any more about the story because that's the game's greatest asset. And if you're going to play it, I want that to be a surprise for you. There are no cutscenes, so a character's actions often accompany the dialogue script, telling you when someone is cowering in fear or glaring with disdain. Pretty much everything in text was well written, usually being just long enough to fully engage without being too wordy. Except when it came to, soul searching? I forget what that thing was called. Basically, you find random people and you can delve into their past lives. While it is interesting, it equates to giving you a wall of text to read through. It offers some nice backstory for the world, but I eventually stopped doing it because it didn't seem to further the plot. And the plot is what I really wanted out of the game. But if you're the kind of person who wants every detail about a world, this is one of the more interesting ways I've seen that delivered. The game has a really good tutorial mode, never really telling you you're in tutorial mode, but it's pretty obvious when you come out of it, because that's when the game's biggest problems really start to happen. And the first problem I noticed was how buggy combat was. See, I had the game set on normal mode because I play games whatever, I should be fine. And I was getting absolutely demolished every time. It got so difficult and unbearably buggy, I had to switch from normal mode to easy mode. And then when I still couldn't get past an area, I had to switch from easy mode to story mode, which is really cool, and I like that it was there, but it felt weird and unfair and less enjoyable because I had to do that to progress because the game wouldn't function normally. I found other bugs with the music dropping out, spells sometimes missing their animations, spells having inconsistent cast times, the game crashing, inaccessible quest lines it was telling me to pursue, and more. But by far, the biggest problem I had was loading screens. It didn't seem that bad at the beginning, but it really became the most taxing part of playing the game. In one of the cool parts of the game, you can get a keep, a big castle, and you can set up with defenses and merchants, and other things that are very interesting. But you always have to go there to take care of it. So every time I want to leave, I have to walk out of the keep, and then there's a loading screen. And I have to walk to the exit of the area I'm in, and then there's a loading screen. And then I have to walk from that entrance to the entrance of the house that I'm trying to get to, and then there's a loading screen. And then I get into the house and I need to go upstairs to see the person who has the quest for me, and there's another loading screen. Then I get to talk to the person I wanted to talk to 10 minutes ago when I started that venture. No plot development, no character banter, nothing but empty space between point A and point B. That really dragged me down. It made it harder to feel like the bits of the story I was unraveling were worth the massive time investment to advance. Whether this game is going to be worth $12 to you is really going to depend on what you want. If you need that old school CRPG itch scratched, or if you want a time-consuming game that will have you playing all month, but you're also willing to sink additional time into researching fixes for bugs, and your love for this kind of story-driven gameplay overpowers buggy controls, then you'll probably get a lot of enjoyment out of Pillars of Eternity. However, if none of that sounds worth it, or if you're not willing to troubleshoot a game while you're playing it, or if watching this footage of me walking around trying to get to the next story point looks too dull, then you'll probably want to skip this month's Humble Monthly. So while it wasn't for me, don't let that discourage you if it's really what you want to try. I hope this more informative review helps you decide if you want to get this month's Humble Monthly or not. And if you enjoyed this video, good.